You are sitting right across from her at the dinner table. The room is completely quiet, yet you have never felt more alone in your entire life. She is looking down at her phone, laughing at a screen. But when she looks up at you, her eyes go completely blank. The warmth is just gone. You find yourself staring at her, wondering, why does this keep happening? Is she completely checked out? Am I just losing my mind here, or am I the problem? Here's the thing, man. The distance between you didn't widen because you stopped caring. It widened because her emotional safety found a home somewhere else. When a woman begins to emotionally detach or redirect her intimacy, her habits don't just change overnight. They leave distinct, heavy psychological footprints. You are not failing at love for noticing this shift. Every man who has ever felt a relationship slipping has stood exactly where you are standing right now. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly how to read these hidden emotional shifts so you can stop guessing, stop doubting your own sanity, and finally see the truth clearly. Let's get into it. Most people believe that infidelity or radical relationship drift starts with a sudden, dramatic betrayal. They look for the explosive middle or the end of the story. But the real truth is that emotional detachment happens in the quiet, unspoken corners of your nervous system before it ever manifests in the real world. When safety leaves a relationship, the love doesn't just instantly vanish. It goes underground. Her nervous system begins to read you as a stranger rather than a sanctuary. This isn't about tracking her location, installing apps, or looking through her phone. It is about tracking the emotional climate of your home. What looks like simple boredom or irritation is often a subconscious shield. It is the anxious avoidance cycle playing out in reverse, where one partner has completely stopped reaching out because they are already invested in a totally different emotional reality. The human mind cannot hold two conflicting versions of intimacy at the same time without showing the strain. When a person decides to step away from a bond, they must first build a case against you in their own mind to justify the departure. This internal rewriting of history completely alters how they interact with you on a daily, micro level. First, look for the death of gentle friction. Here is the part no one talks about. Most couples believe that a total lack of arguments means a relationship is perfectly healthy and peace, but the psychological reality is much darker. Conflict requires immense emotional energy. It means someone is still fighting to be understood because they still care about the alignment of the relationship. When a woman has redirected her emotional intimacy, something in her mind quietly registers, he doesn't need to understand me anymore because it no longer matters. She stops complaining about the dishes. She stops asking why you were late. She stops asking you to change. The healthy friction that keeps two people bound together is replaced by a cold, devastating compliance. She defaults to a polite customer service tone. Most people in relationships mistake the sudden peace for harmony, but it is actually the quiet before the total collapse. Her nervous system has completely stopped trying to co-regulate with yours. Let's look at how this actually sounds in real life. The connected version sounds like, "It really frustrates me when you don't call when you're late. It makes me feel completely forgotten, and I hate fighting about this." But the detached version sounds like, "Oh, you're late again? No worries at all. I didn't even notice, honestly. Go ahead and relax." When you experience that shift, the walls between you start to come up without either of you having to say a single word. It is the sound of someone who has stopped investing in your shared reality. Second, watch closely for micro-defensiveness and premature shielding. This is the one most couples never figure out until it is far too late. Most people in relationships think guilt shows up as sadness, apology, or avoidance. In reality, guilt almost always manifests as unprovoked hostility. Her nervous system is constantly on high alert, operating like a hypersensitive smoke detector that cannot tell the difference between a casual question and a full interrogation. When she is hiding an emotional reality, her brain is constantly projecting her own guilt onto your normal behavior. She creates fights out of thin air just to justify the distance she is already creating. If you ask a simple question, she responds as if she is on trial. Not a simple misunderstanding, not a bad day at work, not temporary stress, but a systematic defensive wall built to keep you from getting too close to the truth. She turns the tables on you instantly so that you are forced onto the defensive, completely forgetting what you originally asked. Let's look at the contrast. The connected version is when you ask, "How was your day?" And she leaks tension, leans in, and says, "It was so long, let me tell you about it." The detached version is when you ask, "How was your day?" And she snaps, "Why are you tracking my time? Don't you trust me? I can't even walk through the door without you suffocating me." And when that happens, your partner stops feeling like a person to come home to and starts feeling like a problem you have to constantly manage just to keep the peace. Third, notice the recategorization of your insights and opinions. This is where it gets really interesting, and here's what changes everything. Most couples think that sharing details about their lives is just a casual habit or a way to pass the time. But attachment science tells us that sharing small details, processing thoughts together, and seeking advice is how we maintain our emotional bond. When a woman exposes her emotional world to someone else, she undergoes a profound identity shift. She will suddenly stop coming to you for advice on things she used to rely on you for. Your opinions, which used to hold massive weight in her life, are suddenly treated as completely irrelevant, outdated, or annoying. What is moving through her is the unspoken thought, "I have someone else to guide me through this now, and their perspective aligns with who I am becoming." She begins to solve problems in isolation, or references vague friends who gave her great advice. This isn't a communication hack you can just fix with a random date night. This is what it looks like when an emotional ecosystem has completely shifted its center of gravity away from you. Let's look at how this plays out over coffee. The connected version sounds like, "I'm having this massive issue at work with my boss. What do you think I should do? You always know how to handle these things." The detached version sounds like, "I already handled that work issue. I don't really need your input on it. It's fine. My friends and I figured it out." That is the devastating shift that turns a relationship that once felt like a refuge into one that feels like a cold, corporate negotiation. Fourth, pay close attention to the erasure of shared future projection. Here is the truth beneath the surface that nobody explains to men. Most people believe that couples drift apart simply because they stop having fun in the present moment or stop going out. But the real anchor of any long-term relationship is the future. Human beings naturally project their desires, dreams, and plans forward with the person they feel safe with. When a woman is emotionally investing her energy elsewhere, her internal monologue is quietly saying, "I can't promise a next year because I don't see myself here, and it feels dishonest to pretend." She will deliberately dodge vacation plans. She will speak in vague, non-committal timelines. She avoids talking about major milestones, purchases, or family events. Emotional distance in a relationship isn't like a massive brick wall that appears overnight. It is like scar tissue that forms slowly over 100 small moments where the future used to be spoken of with excitement, but is now met with absolute silence. Let's look at the exact conversational language. The connected version is, "We should absolutely book that cabin in the mountains for next winter. It'll be amazing to just disconnect together." The detached version is, "Winter is so far away. Let's not plan anything right now. Who knows what will happen by then? Let's just live in the moment." When you hear that shift, the shared horizon you both built together simply vanishes into thin air, leaving you stranded in an empty present. Fifth, watch for hypervigilant device guarding. Most couples default to thinking that phone privacy is just about passwords or basic boundaries. But intimacy isn't built in the massive moments. It is built in the 30-second ones, when you choose to look up, show a meme, or share your world without fear. When a woman's phone becomes an absolute extension of her secret emotional life, her physical behavior around that device changes completely. It is the subtle twist of the wrist to angle the screen away when you sit next to her. It is the immediate face-down placement on the table the exact second you enter the room. Her nervous system experiences actual physical panic if you pick up her device just to check the time or change a song in the car. This isn't a simple, healthy boundary. This is a survival mechanism for a double life. Her phone goes from being a tool for communication to a vault that must be protected at all costs. Let's look at the physical contrast. The connected version is when she leaves her phone buzzing on the counter while she goes to take a shower or run an errand without a second thought. The detached version is when she takes her phone into the bathroom, holds it while cooking, keeps it in her pocket at all times, and guards it like a piece of classified intelligence. This isn't a trick for avoiding conflict. This is what it looks like when someone has learned to hide themselves completely, right in front of your face. Sixth, observe the shift from deep presence to hyper distraction. Most people in relationships think a partner is present just because they are sitting on the couch next to them. But there is a massive difference between physical proximity and emotional presence. When a woman is checked out, her mind is working overtime to process a completely separate emotional narrative. She becomes intensely forgetful of things you told her just hours before. You will find yourself repeating stories, dates, and plans because her brain is literally filtering you out. Her attention span when talking to you drops to near zero. When you speak, she gives empty verbal nods like, yeah, cool, or wow. But if you ask her what you just said, she can't repeat it. Her focus is fragmented because her emotional investments are tied up elsewhere. She is physically in the room, but her energy, her curiosity, and her focus are entirely somewhere else. Let's look at the contrast in daily life. The connected version is when you talk about your day, she sets her things down, looks you in the eyes, and engages with the story. The detached version is when you speak, she continues typing on her laptop, doesn't look up, and says, that's crazy. Tell me later, I'm busy right now. It turns the home into a place where you are constantly competing with an invisible ghost for her attention. 7th, look at the sudden, unexplained changes in her personal narrative and lifestyle default. Most couples assume that personal growth is always a solo journey. But when two people are deeply bonded, their tastes, habits, and vocabulary naturally co-evolve over time. When a woman suddenly adopts completely new slang, starts listening to an entirely different genre of music she used to hate, or develops intense interest in hobbies she previously ridiculed, it rarely happens in a vacuum. Human beings mirror the people they are emotionally desperate to impress. If she is suddenly changing her routine, her style, or her worldview overnight without any logical catalyst, she is likely absorbing the identity of the person she is secretly turning toward. She is trying on a new version of herself for a new audience, and you are left interacting with a stranger who wears your partner's face. Let's look at the language shift. The connected version is when she discovers something new and immediately pulls you into it. I found this amazing artist. You have to listen to the song with me. The detached version is when she secretly changes and excludes you. I just like this stuff now. People change. You don't know everything about me. It leaves you feeling like the ground beneath your relationship is constantly shifting. 8th, analyze the structural breakdown of physical and non-sexual intimacy. Most people think relationship drift only shows up as a dead bedroom, but sexual intimacy can actually be faked or performed out of habit or obligation. The real tell is the death of non-sexual, casual intimacy. It is the missing kiss on the forehead when passing in the hallway. It is the way she pulls her hand away quickly when you reach for it across the car seat. It is the lack of spontaneous touch. When a woman is emotionally attached elsewhere, physical touch with you begins to feel like a betrayal to the new object of her affection. Her body registers your touch as an intrusion rather than comfort. Her muscles will stiffen slightly when you hug her, or she will cut the embrace short. Let's look at the contrast. The connected version is when you sit on the couch, she naturally leans her weight against you or rests her legs on yours. The detached version is when she sits on the opposite end of the couch, wraps herself tightly in a blanket, and creates a physical barrier of cushions between you. That is the shift that signals her body has already closed its doors to your presence. 9th, notice the emergence of the comparison trap and persistent criticism. This is the final, most painful stage of emotional transition. Most couples experience moments where they wish their partner did things differently. But when a woman has emotionally migrated, she starts openly or subtly comparing you to an idealized standard. She begins criticizing core parts of your personality that she used to love or accept. She will make passive-aggressive comments about your ambition, your style, your friends, or how you communicate. This persistent criticism is a psychological tool called devaluing. By making you look bad in her mind and out loud, she lowers her own guilt for treating you poorly or preparing to leave. It allows her to say, I didn't destroy this relationship. He was just never enough for me anyway. Let's look at how this plays out in conversation. The connected version is, hey, I know you're stressed, but let's try to work on how we talk about our finances together. The detached version is, why can't you be more like other guys who actually have their lives together? You always mess everything up. It is a total shift from treating you as a partner to treating you as an obstacle to her happiness. This isn't a checklist to make you paranoid, man. It is an absolute invitation to show up with total clarity, dignity, and radical honesty about what is actually happening in your life right now. When you internalize these psychological shifts, you stop reacting blindly to her distance. You stop begging for crumbs of attention, and you start responding from a place of grounded personal power. You cannot fix a leak until you are willing to look at the crack in the foundation. You have to see the absolute reality of the situation before you can ever hope to change it or walk away with your self-respect intact. Not more screaming matches. Not more texting paragraphs to explain your worth. Not waiting around hoping things magically reverse. But a man who looks at the situation clearly and respects himself enough to acknowledge the truth. Real intimacy doesn't start when you desperately try to patch up a bond with someone who has already checked out and built a life somewhere else. It starts the exact moment you stop waiting for the relationship to get better on its own. Look at the cold reality without blinking, and decide to be the man who values his own peace, his own truth, and his own dignity enough to demand absolute reality.